What is the number one thing that stops agency owners from specializing in a niche? Fear. It's the fear that they will get fewer clients. I work with and meet niche agency owners that are living examples of how specializing is the best thing they've done for their agency. In today's episode, Amanda Lee Smith shares the transformative process that led her to a niche and the defining moments that made her go all in. Her agency has worked with brands like Adidas, Arcyterx, Lululemon, and Allbirds because of their specialty in outdoor sports and activities. What sets her agency apart is their deep industry knowledge and their ability to partner with clients as true experts. Specializing has made working with dream clients not just possible, but a reality. Of course, the decision to specialize isn't always straightforward. It requires introspection, experimentation, and a willingness to adapt. Amanda shares key actions that helped her claim and stand out in her niche, including how they shaped their brand and positioning for the niche, innovative ways they attract and work with dream clients, and knowing when to say yes and when to decline opportunities outside the niche. Stay tuned to gain actionable insights into claiming and thriving in your own niche. Welcome to the Small But Mighty Agency Podcast. If you want to grow an agency to 7 figures and beyond without working more hours in your business, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Audrey Joy Kwan. I know what it takes to build an agency, including supporting an agency owner in selling and exiting. I also have a master's degree in communications, specializing in organizational development. My team and I have worked behind the scenes of multiple 7-figure agencies and have coached and consulted with over 150 agency owners. All this to say, when you join us on the Small But Mighty Agency Podcast, you get real-world experience and practical tips that help you work less, earn more, and lead with integrity. So let's go. Hey friends, welcome back to the Small But Mighty Agency Podcast. If you've been with us for a while, you know that one of my favorite things to do is to explore what is working in agencies and what isn't. We do it through the eyes of our guests who are agency owners and agency experts. When I first connected with Amanda, we hit it off and I knew I had to have her on the podcast to share how she has used positioning to help her agency stand out and get clients. Amanda Lee Smith is the CEO and co-founder of Monday Creative, a branding and creative agency building brands that enhance human potential and seduce people into the outdoors. Their clients include Adidas, Arcyterx, Lululemon, and Allbirds. Who they serve is connected to Amanda's deep passion for the outdoors. We're going to jump right into the no fluff good stuff about the path to finding her positioning, how the niche has changed the agency for the better, and what creative things they have been able to do in the niche to engage with clients. Amanda, thank you for being here. You have a very clear niche. You serve brands that are about the outdoors, and you've positioned the agency to have a strong reputation in that industry. Of course, it's taken time to get here. How did you initially identify the outdoor industry as the niche for your agency?
It took us about a year to really get there. I'm not going to lie. We started out as I was just running a sole proprietorship and I was kind of saying yes to whatever projects came my way. And then there was too many projects for me to take on. I brought in 2 partners and suddenly we had an agency. And so for the first year of running Monday, we kind of carried on down that path. And it meant we were doing projects in education, in SaaS, in some brands that feel more aligned with what we do now, but really it ran the full gamut. Whoever came to us, we said yes. And at the end of the first year, we did a really meaningful exercise where we audited everyone that we'd worked with and we assessed the quality of the engagement, how proud we were of the work, how much we enjoyed working with that particular client. And an interesting, clear theme emerged with the projects we had the most enjoyment out of and the most success with. All were more brands that existed in the outdoor and active space. So it was actually a combination of 3 things. It was that assessment of where we were seeing the most success. It was reflection on where we liked spending our time. You know, I am an avid trail runner, backcountry camper. My co-founders are both really into the outdoors as well. They're anglers and campers and hikers. And we just love that space. And we knew that people in that space tend to have the same environmental passion that we have and just commitment to health and movement. So it was a mix of, this is the work that we find satisfying. These are the people that we want to work with. This is the thing we like doing. And this is actually our background. So we all met working at a brand called Kit and Ace, which was a clothing company, actually still is a clothing company, started by the founders of Lululemon. And the whole kind of thesis behind Kit and Ace is clothing that kind of moves with you the way your yoga clothes do, but you can wear them to the office. So we got really good at telling the story of performance apparel, and we realized that was a special niche that we could offer our clients. So those all came together, and it was like so in our face and apparent. We were shocked we hadn't seen it sooner.
What's interesting is the pivot that you took into claiming that niche. Now, I know that anytime an agency owner goes to find their niche, it's not an immediate kind of stake in the ground, claim that niche. All the marketing typically still is pretty generic. And at some point in time, they turn on that switch, so to speak, and then claim that niche. Now, was there a particular moment or experience for you where you kind of flipped the switch and decided, yes, we're going all in to claim this niche?
Yeah, there was a moment when we decided kind of energetically that we were going all in on the niche, but the actual flip was a bit more gradual. We started by going through our content that we were putting out into the world. So mainly our Instagram content, but also our blog, and just removing anything that didn't feel aligned. And also our case studies. We had started creating case studies by that point, and we thought, you know what? Yeah, it's scary to have less work out in the world, but we really want to make it clear that this is who we serve and this is what we do. And so it was an exercise of editing. We edited down everything and really only left the work that was representative of the work that we wanted to do. And then we started work on what I call Monday 2.0. We're kind of on Monday 3.4 now at the moment, but Monday 2.0 was a rebrand and a relaunch of our website where we sort of modeled our brand after the types of retail brands we wanted to work with. So it looks more like a performance brand if you're on our website. Our logo looks more like it could be a clothing company. Our content looks more that way. And when we relaunched the website with that new brand, that was when our messaging went all in on seducing people into the outdoors and building brands that enhance human potential. It took a little while before I figured out my business dev strategy around that. And it actually all coalesced right around a couple months before the pandemic when I realized, like, why am I shooting and aiming really broadly in biz dev? If I want to be working with the outdoor and active industry, I'm just going to focus all of my energy on these types of trade shows and events. And that is where everything really coalesced and made us start to be a known figure in the industry.
I like what you're pointing out there. I think you're really talking about, hey, how do you become a niche agency that stands out in the industry? And for you, that's the outdoor industry. And you've kind of covered the brand changing, i.e. the websites, the assets, and all the case studies. Was there anything else that you were currently doing to get your footprint out there?
Yeah, I mean, it really started actually with our own messaging. So we do messaging for our clients. It wasn't just our look and feel. We had to re-look at our pillars. So we rejigged our pillars so that they spoke specifically to our expertise in performance. And then, we started doing really deliberate outreach within those markets. So going to the trade shows, as I mentioned, also just like refocusing who I followed on LinkedIn. So really starting to follow people who are CMOs and CEOs in that space. And we do specific events to engage these people. We had started initially doing something that we call table talks, where we invite CMOs and CEOs, maybe in a certain city or region, for a really nice dinner, 12-person dinner. We get everyone around the table. Everyone has a question on their plate at the beginning of dinner, and it facilitates a discussion around what's working for them in marketing, what's not, what are their biggest challenges. We give them lots of food and alcohol, and by the end of the event, they feel like they're all best friends and like they've all, been in a CMO marketers support group. We rejigged that once we rethought this audience, and now we do something called tailgate talks, So we take this table talks format and we take it into the outdoors. We invite all the same people, but specifically people that are working at outdoor brands, and we take them on a hosted hike. So we do a hike up in the North Shore Mountains, and then instead of doing the dinner at a restaurant, we do it in the parking lot of the trail in camp chairs. We bring in dinner, we bring in drinks, and we ask all those same tough questions, but we do it in a much more brand aligned environment.
What it sounds like to me is how focused you've become in your marketing by having the clear niche and by having clear messaging. It's very easy for you to approach the people that are the buyers for your agency. You're not randomly showing up places and hoping that the right buyer is going to be there. Because you are so niche, because you have the right messaging, you can show up at the exact place where they're looking for you or they're looking for information, and support them down their buyer's journey by giving value and creative value, I might say, because the whole idea of a tailgate party is so creative for your niche, because guess what? You're speaking to people who are outdoorsy people, and now you have a tailgate party, which is very outdoorsy and kind of speaks to their passion, and you're meeting them where they're at. So I love the creativity behind your marketing, because it isn't just meeting people where they're at. It literally is understanding what their desires are, what they think is valuable, putting that value in a fun environment, and then delivering it. And I think that is so special. That speaks to the benefit and the impact of having a niche and being able to focus your marketing, your biz dev in that niche. Now, I'm curious, there must have been challenges that you faced in the early stages of positioning your agency. Can you share a few of those challenges and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, two of them come to mind. So the first one is, I think every agency, as they start to grow, regardless of their positioning, faces this challenge, which is how do you start to weed out those clients that you realize aren't a good fit anymore? We took a few approaches to this, one being so unapologetic with our messaging, just like blatantly stating this is who we're for. That said, I'll talk about this probably at some point, but just because you are maybe not aiming for a certain target doesn't mean other people won't be drawn to that message that you put out there. But there were definitely clients that we knew weren't a fit for us, and we wanted to kind of get them off of our books. And we did that a few different ways. Sometimes we waited for things to naturally wrap up. Sometimes we raised our prices and kind of made it a little bit untenable for those clients. Some clients, we just let them kind of ride out a little bit longer if they were good people. And then a couple of them we just broke up with in the most generous way possible. So that was one challenge, is you realize suddenly that people aren't a fit, and it makes it easier to wrap up those relationships, and it makes it more clear who isn't a fit. And the second thing, which I think is a perceived challenge, but isn't a real challenge, but I got this from our team. They had a real fear, and I hear this from clients as well. They had a real fear that by going that niche, we were excluding ourselves from opportunities and like just narrowing down the field that we can work with. It has totally been the opposite of that, I would say. If anything, the more niche we got, the more opportunities we had. And I think I've shared this with you. You mentioned some of the clients we work with. Adidas is a perfect example. Adidas would never have worked with us if we were just a typical small boutique agency based in Vancouver. They worked with us because we had a very specific expertise that we've gone really public with, and they knew that that was what they were looking for. So that approach to being so unapologetic has really served us in working with really dream clients. And it's brought other people to us. You know, we still do work in education. We still do work in property development. And often the people that are coming to us, I'll say, I'm like, this isn't our area of expertise. And they'll say, no, we know that. And we really want your retail expertise and your brand, and specifically your performance and activewear brand expertise. And we want you to apply that to our industry.
I really appreciate you pointing out the fear of niching often comes down to the fear of less clients or fewer clients. and you pointing out that it was quite the opposite for you. And I gotta say, working with agency owners who have niches, it is the same across the board for niche agency owners, where I think initially there's that fear, oh my gosh, we're going to limit the amount of clients that we get because we're now niche. But really what happens is there's this like flywheel that really starts to take place when your name is out there inside that niche, that people just, they start talking about you and you start to build that flywheel and you get more clients. And the beauty of having a niche, a clear niche, is that you're actually able to truly partner with your clients because you actually understand their buyer's journey a lot better than if you were doing 10 different types of industries. And I think that's the hugest value that we're speaking about, and why companies like Adidas and Lululemon and Allbirds come to you, because they understand that, hey, they're not just working with a marketing agency, they're working with someone who actually can come alongside them, that understands their buyer's journey clearly. I think that's huge value. And on the other side of that, it's very interesting for you to say, look, like, we still attract people who don't fit inside this niche, despite the fact that our messaging is geared towards the outdoor industry. And to that, I have a question. How rigid or flexible do you think agencies should be in staying within their chosen niche?
Yeah, I think about that often, and my team asks me that. It's actually fortuitous timing. Just this morning, I was listening to one of my favorite other agency related podcasts, which I honestly think should be in every agency owner's repertoire, which is Blair Enns and David C. Baker's podcast, Two Bobs. And in today's episode, I mean, I listen to them the minute they come out. So in today's episode, they were talking about how the target and the market are two different things. So you might think of the target as and I'm revealing how little I know about golf, but the hole that you're aiming for in golf. Is there a name for that?
I don't know. I'm not a golf person, I gotta admit, but I understand where you're going with it.
The market is the green. The target is the actual hole that you're shooting for. And you always are going to aim for that hole, but sometimes you're going to hit the green, and the green can be really, really broad. We have a set of values that our clients need to fit in. They have to, it can't be about excess consumption. So we don't work with luxury brands. We don't work with anything that's harmful to the environment. We had a car company approach us a couple of years ago, and it seemed like a really cool opportunity because in my head, it was an electric vehicle. It turns out it wasn't at all. And the company was actually owned by one of the greatest advocates of fracking in the UK. It's like an oil baron in the UK. And as I was doing my research, I just realized no matter how good of an opportunity this was, there was no way I could, in good conscience, take on this work. We also had a client that is really focused on the online gambling space, and my team just couldn't do it. We also had an organization, I come from a religious background, and so I tend to be plugged into a lot of Christian organizations from my upbringing. But one particular organization had a really public stance against gay students. And as a team that has queer people, we didn't feel like we could, in good conscience, take on that scope of work. So there are things we say no to. And we have our kind of guiding positioning, which is we build brands that enhance human potential, as our filter. So if I can honestly say, yeah, this brand builds human potential, it enables us to live more fully, it's making life easier and better for humans without being detrimental to the environment, then, we'll say yes. We also have kind of an filter. we don't work with jerks. So that's the other way that we try to weed things out, is we're like, are these good people? Are they doing things that are enhancing human potential?
I love how the mission to enhance human potential aligns well with outdoor brands. Because if you think about outdoor brands, what are they doing? They're getting people outside, they're asking people to expand and stretch themselves. And then taking that mission and using it as a lens or filter for brands or companies that may not fit the outdoor industry but align with that mission makes a lot of sense, because now you have a thread that combines or goes through each of your clients. And I think that's what's important, is defining what is the thread that, if you were going to go out of your niche, what is the thread that binds it all together? And I feel like you guys have done a really good job identifying what that really is.
We've been really lucky in terms of clients. Like, we do this exercise every Monday morning where in our Monday huddle, everyone shares their rose, thorn, and their bud from the previous week. So the rose is the high, the thorn is the low, and the bud is what they're looking forward to this week. And if I hear about one client too consistently in people's thorns, then I know we have a problem client. And I can honestly say, since we really nailed our focus, I don't hear that many complaints about our clients. It might be like one project that goes awry. So that's been fine. We have refined our positioning over the years. So within our positioning, we have our purpose statement, which is we want to seduce people into the outdoors. And kind of our how is that we build brands that enhance human potential. Those took a little bit of time. You know, my business partner and I, my former business partner and I, were both writers. And so once we kind of figured out what it was that we wanted to do and who we wanted to focus on, I think it took us maybe 2 or 3 months to really get to the right words. However, our pillars have evolved and they become more relevant as we grow. We started really, really niche. You know, one of our pillars is endemic expertise, which is our knowledge of the outdoor and active industry. And the way that we expressed that for a long time was technical apparel is in our DNA, because most of us came up through Lululemon or Kitten Ace or Arcyterx, but technical apparel is so niche. And I think that was important at the beginning because it was an opening to tell the story of being trained by Chip Wilson on how to talk about the benefit to the end user, all the design decisions that are made. We are good at telling the story of how it actually serves you and makes your life better. But we've recently refined that to performance is in our DNA. And suddenly that the word performance as opposed to technical apparel, that opens up a whole new set of opportunities because we also work in hard goods that have to perform. We also work in wellness products that make your body perform. And we're also a really high performing team. One of our kind of big rock goals, we have 3 big rock goals. We update them every 5 years. But one of them is to create a hub of talent here in Vancouver that you wouldn't expect to find here. You might only expect to find this level of talent in New York or San Francisco. And to that end, we've made a point of only hiring the best. You know, we don't just hire someone because they happen to be available and we have an opening. We'll wait for someone that really has specific expertise in that niche, and we know that they're better than anyone else in the city. And so performance extends to how we show up as well. So it's evolving and learning and being flexible, not changing the course, but knowing that sometimes you just got to tighten the cogs a little bit.
I want to go back to the rose, thorn, and bud exercise that you do with your team. We all do daily and weekly huddles differently, but I've never heard it framed with a garden analogy before. I love it because it's so outdoor related and matches your brand. I also want to point out when agency leaders really listen to how their internal team experiences the client, it helps agencies have a better relationship with the client and it leads to better retainment, among other things. And key for me is hearing you say, look, we really listen to our people, get their feedback, and take action. Emphasis on taking action because organizations can do a lot of listening without action taking. And the other point I want to bring out is how much that one word performance has impacted everything you do. It goes to show that it doesn't take long statements or complicated explanations to define the agency. So I'd like to switch gears here and talk about trends. To excel in a niche, you have to keep up with industry trends. How do you do that in your agency? What trends do you see in the outdoor space that are shaping the way you approach branding and creative work?
So there's some fun trends. Maybe I'll just focus on one that comes to mind right away, and it's close to my heart, and so I'm paying a lot of attention to it. But the thing that I'm most excited about is the overlay of fashion and the outdoors. So historically, the outdoors was all about function. You know, you would go to MEC if you're in Canada or REI if you're in the US, and you would figure out what is going to keep me the driest, what's going to keep me the warmest, what's going to move with my body. And if you're a woman, this is a conversation that comes up a lot in our industry. It was pink or teal or purple. And it was like, this is what you're stuck with. And there's been a big shift towards incorporating fashion. And specifically, that's happening in the running space. So, run is kind of my lane. That's where I get most excited. I'm a trail runner, I'm a road runner, I race. And there's so many amazing brands that are taking all of these really fun principles of fashion marketing and fashion and applying it to run. And so, a couple that come to my mind off the top of my head in the run space are a brand called Bandit Running out of New York and Satisfy. They're actually both mostly targeted towards men. Bandit has a women's line as well, but I would say they really excel in the men's space. But they're doing almost these like high fashion photo shoots, and the designs are so much more interesting than they used to be. In the hiking space, which is my other passion, there's a brand like Hiker Kind, which is literally two New York, fashionistas that also happen to love through hiking. And they've brought principles of fashion design into backcountry gear. So like these really nice button downs that also happen to perform exactly the way you need them to if you're on like a 20-day through hike. So that overlay of fashion and outdoor is very exciting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how do you take that trend back to your clients? How do you approach it in the branding and creative work that you do? As marketers, that's what we do. We go out there, we find trends, we find things that are interesting and cool. We want to look ahead for our clients and implement some of these things so that we can help our clients stay ahead of the curve. And how do you bring that back to your clients? And how do you share these trends in your agency?
We always do it through the voice of the customer. So there are so many niches nowadays, like the internet, this. TikTok means trends move like daily. There's a new trend every day. It's so hard to keep up with what the latest kind of core trend is, whether it's cottage core or gorp core or, whatever movement, strawberry, what is it? Like the summer girl. I'm too old to be talking about this, but anyway, you know what I mean. There are too many trends, and every brand is speaking to a different niche within that. Speaking of niching, brands have, they can find their own little corner of it. And so it's about hearing from their customer. What are they into right now? What's speaking to them? What's going to resonate with them in what's happening in their life right now? We try to not take guesses. My team is deep in desk research all the time. We pay a lot of attention to email marketing. That tends to be a great reference point for what's happening visually, with language, with product. We're all the social channels. I will not go on TikTok, but my team is on TikTok paying attention to what's happening there. We have magazine subscriptions, we have tears that we put on the walls, but no matter how plugged in we are to what's happening in the zeitgeist, nothing compares to talking to our audience. So, you mentioned our work with Adidas. The biggest project that we did with them was a research project where we were talking to Gen Z and Gen Alpha. So like 10 and 12-year-olds, finding out how they think about themselves in relation to sport, and really thinking about how the brand can be marketing to them in 3 or 4 years' time when they're becoming the consumers. I'm a 44-year-old woman almost. There's no way that I could speak on behalf of a 14-year-old or a 12-year-old. We really need to go to them. And so we not only capture the quotes and the trends that come out of those, we also capture imagery so you can really see who it is that's speaking and kind of put it into context. We pull their words verbatim and kind of find the nuggets within that we bring back. And then you especially when you're working with a big brand, there has to be also a narrative that you're bringing back to their team. Here's what's happening in the world, and here's the brief to your brand. Here's how you bring it to life in your product, in your marketing, in, the events and activations that you do. It has to be really actionable as well as truly immediately relevant.
Thank you for sharing that. No matter what niche you're in, trends on social media move so fast. And your point about focusing on the ideal client and what they want to see and what they care about, it supports deleting the unnecessary noise. Now, speaking of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, I have one niece who's Gen Z and 3 Gen Alpha nieces. And between those 2 generations, never mind my generation, their purchase behavior is so different. I grew up with commercials. They grew up with social media influencers. And now my Gen Alpha nieces will be growing up with AI. Anyhow, Amanda, before we wrap up here, one last question. No agency owner's journey is the same. Tell us about yours.
Mine was not, I think, the typical journey. When I look at my peers, most of them are either designers who started maybe freelance designing and then that blew up and they turned it into an agency, or maybe they came up through big agency as a more copy driven creative director and then branched out on their own. I didn't take either of those paths. I actually thought I was going to be in magazine publishing. So I started out as a writer. I was really passionate about reading and creating publications and did my master's in publishing and really thought that the path for me was to be the editor of some national or international magazine. But as I was doing this was right around the time that the 2008 recession happened and every major magazine, at least in Canada, seemed to be closing their doors or downsizing in the US. And it became clear that telling stories for magazines wasn't really going to be lucrative. And if you really want to do it, you kind of have to have a wealthy family and do internships at New York magazines right out of university. And I was already in my 30s and, that wasn't the path that I was taking. And I had been a freelance writer on and off for years. I moved around a ton in my 20s and in my early 30s. And freelancing was always what I did kind of in between while I was looking for other jobs. And so I was used to working for myself. And I was kind of that exact situation. I had left Kit and Ace. I was consulting on my own. I was doing some consulting for another strategy agency. I was doing some of my own writing, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. I'm one of these people who would just say yes to everything, which means I've learned about a lot of different things. I was doing work in financial tech, in insurance tech. I was writing for all different departments at different colleges and universities. Your knowledge becomes so vast. But because I was saying yes to everything, I was subcontracting a lot of work. And suddenly I found myself as this project manager with 7 subcontractors doing the actual work that I love to do. And I had this revelation, one, that I didn't want to be a project manager. I wanted to be able to stay in the high level strategic work and actually interact with clients, but that I had the foundation of an agency. And so I reached out to my 2 most trusted writers that I'd ever worked with, both of whom reported to me at Kit and Ace and had gone on to other amazing brands. So my co-founders, Lindsay, she had gone on to Sage, the natural wellness company, and our other co-founder, Rachel, had gone on to be a senior copywriter at Aritzia. And so I just hit them up one day and I said, would you want to start something with me? And speaking to the power or not power of niching, we originally launched Monday as a content agency, thinking specifically we were going to be doing content strategy, copywriting, but thank God we didn't get too niche in terms of our actual service, because within months, people we were working with were asking if we could also do much bigger strategies and if we had a designer who could then bring the work we were doing to life. So we very quickly grew it from the 3 of us just writing copy and doing content strategy to having a full-time designer, to having a full-time project manager, and then really grew it into this business where we have 3 different streams of insights and research, strategy, and creative execution.
A lot of agency owners that I meet do start their agency by being a specialist in something. And as a specialist, they're really good at it, which means that, hey, hello, you're going to get a whole bunch of clients. And before you know it, you're managing a whole bunch of people. And the next logical step is to form the agency. Amanda, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience with niching and positioning. Before we hop off, where can people find you?
Yeah, the best place is if you want to follow Monday. We are Monday Vancouver on Instagram. I think we're Monday Creative Inc. on LinkedIn. I personally am really active on LinkedIn. So Amanda Lee Smith, that's Lee, the Lee. That's probably where you can engage with me the best, is through my LinkedIn. I am sharing things all the time. I'm sharing job posts. I'm sharing things that I'm thinking. I am commenting on other people's things. I just love LinkedIn as a platform, and it's been such an amazing tool for connecting with folks. So that's your best bet for me.
Thank you, Amanda. We'll get all that into the show notes. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much, Audrey. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with me at the Small But Mighty Agency podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you hit the follow or subscribe button in your podcast app and share it with a friend. I'll see you on the next one.